Okay, we're pleased to welcome our next city council candidate, Natalya Zernitskaya. Thanks for coming by, Natalya, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and why you're running for city council?
Of course. So thank you for the opportunity first. So I came to Santa Monica by way of my best friend who I joke he convinced me to move here, but in reality, I moved down here after college and I immediately felt a strong connection to Santa Monica because I saw it as this progressive place where people cared about each other and cared about their community and wanted to keep it moving forward. So I immediately set to work trying to figure out a way that I could become a Santa Monican. And it took me about 4 years to be able to find a job and an affordable apartment, which was a rent controlled unit, to be able to move in here. I am an immigrant. I was originally born in Belarus. My family and I moved here from the from the former USSR after the fall of the USSR as Jewish refugees. And we had to rely on government assistance programs and we had to rely on nonprofits. And I know how important those resources are. So as a council member, I want to make sure that we protect those for folks who need them. I also understand the importance of rent control and the importance of safe, stable housing. And that's something that I would work to protect as well. For the last about 10 years or so, I've been working mostly on issues-based advocacy and issues-based political activism, particularly with regards to housing and homelessness and women's rights and the environment and transportation and all of that intersecting with diversity, equity, inclusivity, and accessibility.
Great, thanks so much. So I want to start by just asking you about an issue that is important to me. I'm one of the proponents of the ballot measure GS, and I'm also listed as one of the opponents on the ballot language for measure DT. And I know that you put in your questionnaire response that you weren't really able to take a position on that due to your obligation with the League of Women Voters. So can you explain the situation there and why you're not able to take a position and how you think that the fact that you're not able to take that position could, affect the campaign, that we're in the middle of?
So as you all read in my questionnaire, when I submitted it, I had noted that because of an obligation and commitment that I had taken on prior to deciding to jump into the race, I was not able to take a position because I was performing an impartial, nonpartisan ballot measure analysis. So I'm very happy to share with you all that earlier this evening, I completed that obligation and submitted my analyses. And so now I am able to publicly state that I do support Measure GS.
Great. And do you have a position on measure DT as well?
I oppose Measure DT.
Great. Thanks so much. And let's go to Danny next.
Hi, Natalya. Could you talk about specifically what your goals are or what specific initiatives or programs you want to implement to help the city reach its RHNA targets, specifically when it comes to affordable housing?
Of course. So I know that about 2/3 of our RHNA target has to be affordable housing. There is a distinction between deed restricted affordable housing, which is what folks normally think of, and affordable housing according to the definition of HCD. I know we want to target most of that as deed restricted affordable housing because then we know that the folks that are going to be living there are, going to be the folks with the highest need. And I do recognize that deed restricted affordable housing doesn't work for everyone, but it is a very underserved portion of our population. I think that we can do more to strengthen the streamlining of building deed restricted affordable housing. I know that we've already done a lot for example, in reducing the number of parking spots that deed restricted affordable housing projects need. And we've done a lot of work in trying to streamline deed restricted affordable housing on city-owned land. I think we can do more of that. I think we can look at ways that we can strengthen the inclusionary zoning requirement, because currently, there's the issue of most deed restricted affordable housing is built through inclusionary when we build market rate development, and the percentages are set by the city at different levels for different levels of affordability, and it gets very confusing, and it's really easy to think that, oh, okay, there's going to be 100 units and we have a 30% inclusionary, so it's going to be 30 units affordable. So I think we also need to do more education around what the status quo is, and look to the resources that we have in our community to look for ways we can strengthen that and improve it. And I actually have a meeting set for later this week to speak to someone with expertise in deed restricted affordable housing to talk about other ways that we can work to improve our policies there.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Patricia now.
Natalya, who might you be meeting with later this week?
Tara Barauskas.
I sort of guessed that, but I was just checking. There are a couple of answers in your questionnaire that I would like to have a tiny bit more responsive to the questions. The question is, what is your philosophy on the appropriate scope of development that should be approved in Santa Monica? And your answer responds only to housing, but not all development is housing. What do you think about how should Santa Monica look at non-housing development?
Thank you for the opportunity to expand on that a bit. I focus on housing just because that's where my brain always goes, just because I've been so involved in the housing advocacy world for the past decade or so. But I think we need to look at how we can build more complete neighborhoods. So mixed use development along boulevards, which allows opportunities for neighborhood serving retail and housing in the same place. And especially with, now a lot more folks are working from home. So that might be, people might not want to go further from where they live and might want to just go downstairs, grab a cup of coffee, or, open a business downstairs and live upstairs. We need to create those kinds of opportunities. I'm not a big fan of, and I generally, unless I see a very, very specific benefit to the city, I wouldn't be in favor of additional commercial only development like the Water Garden, because that's just a driver of traffic. And while there definitely are some, tax benefits, we get some of the revenues, and we get to use the space sometimes. It's really prioritizing, cars over people because of all of the parking that we have there, and people don't really get to stay in that space like day round, night round, weekend round, etc. So it's not really activated. It's not really contributing to having complete neighborhoods as much as, say, mixed use development along boulevards would.
Which of course is already in our code. So
Yes.
but it's not utilized to the extent that it could be.
Yeah, and I'd love to also see more transit oriented development, because I think we need to connect it to the transportation and try to reduce our dependence on cars, because we know that the pollution, not only from gas, because there are also electric cars, but there's also pollution from like the tires and all of those other additional factors that impact our neighborhoods and make us less safe and less healthy. And it unfortunately, it also impacts underserved and more marginalized communities the worst.
Okay, if I get another turn, I have a totally different topic to talk to you about, but I'll let other people go first.
Great, we'll come back to you, Patricia. Let's go to Janine first.
Okay, my question, I read your questionnaire, and one of our questions was on the salary issue, which was very visible several years ago, where the Compensation Advisory Committee, the Pension Advisory Committee was formed. And I was glad to see your answer. It wasn't an emotional feeling that we need to retain everyone, pay them as much as we can. It was based on a thoughtful review of the data. And so can you tell me some other, and one of the, besides solving the homeless and the housing crisis, one of the roles in City Council is to make sure the budget is sound. And can you share with me some other thoughts? The headcount is a very high % of the city budget. And also the unfunded pension liability is about 9% of the city budget. Can you share what you would bring to the council position with your knowledge of the budget?
I am really glad that you asked me that question because it gives me the opportunity to share not only my experience on the audit subcommittee, but my background, my professional background in financial services. So I'm a senior due diligence analyst, and currently I primarily focus on alternative investments. So what that means is I get to do the deep dives on what is this company? What is this program? Does it make sense? Do the financials make sense? And, you know, are they allocating their resources appropriately? And so that's something that I would really bring to City Council is a deep understanding of how budgets work. And I actually, you know, some folks read books and magazines for fun. Sometimes I'll read the comprehensive annual financial report, but that's just me. It is a very long report though, so my printer gets tired after a while.
Great, thank you. Dan.
Hey, Natalya, good to see you. On your questionnaire, under the public safety section, you had kind of a short. Wondering if you would kind of dig into that a little more. So you say you were disappointed with the results of the report, but appreciative of the next steps that resulted with the PSROC. Can you clarify a little bit more?
Of course. So the OIR report definitely highlighted some significant lapses in our leadership structure within our public safety and law enforcement spheres. And I know that now our, you know, the person who was police chief at that time has resigned and we have a new police chief. I think that I was disappointed with the fact that there were not better, that there was not like better communication among the leadership. I was also disappointed by the fact that there were a number of body cams that had gone off and we didn't have that data. And I think that it was a very good, you know, quote unquote, just the facts report. And we need to make sure that we're turning that into action. You know, I don't know if we need to get body cams that have bigger battery packs. I'm not sure, but there were definitely a few things in there that I believe, you know, were pointed out by the Public Safety Reform Advisory Committee that then became the PSROC. I know that that was a process. And I know that right now the PSROC is trying to do all the work that it can. And I think that through that work, we need to figure out how we can provide them with some more support so that they can better take the recommendations of that report and put it into action.
Thank you. And before I go back to Patricia, did anyone else want to get in here? Raina. Okay.
Sure. Hi, Natalya. You seem very competent, which is important. You seem like you have the skill set for the job. And I'm just, you know, wondering, because I'm always really sensitive about matters of diversity. And I know you were the president of the League of Women Voters. And I guess I'd like to know if you could maybe share an example where you've had a situation of microaggression towards you as a woman or towards a colleague as a woman, and how you handled that situation.
So not necessarily as president of the League of Women Voters of Santa Monica, but in my workplace, because I work in financial services, it's a very male-dominated field. There's quite a few experiences that myself and other women in the workplace have had where it's more of a, they don't treat women, obviously not all people, but like some certain folks will not treat women with respect or believe what they say until a man repeats it. So when that's happened, what I've tried to do, and I've tried my best, and I will completely acknowledge that it's a learning process and it takes a few tries sometimes. I will very candidly state, hey, so-and-so said something. Can we please discuss that before we move on to listening to what somebody who was trying to talk over them was saying. Recently, I was personally also having a conversation with someone who lives in the city, and we were talking about my candidacy, and they continually kept interrupting me. But when I tried to answer their question, they said, "Oh, stop interrupting me, you're talking over me." So, with the civil discourse skills that I would bring to this position, what I did was de-escalate, and I gently and I kindly ended that conversation. And I said, "Thank you very much for your time. I have to go," because I believe that if folks are not able to be civil, it's okay to end the conversation in a respectful way and walk away, because we shouldn't let things escalate. And if I need to get in the middle of folks who are potentially escalating a situation, I can step in and I can distract with something. I can, say something that just takes it away from that topic and just changes it completely, so we don't have to continue on going on that path, and then check in with the person who was the subject of that microaggression to be able to validate what they experienced. Because a lot of the times I feel that folks who are put in that situation for whatever reason start thinking, "Oh, did I do something wrong? Was it?" And it's no, this was not your fault. Someone treated you incorrectly, and you are, your feelings are valid. You belong, and thank you for sharing your thoughts, just to help somebody get through that difficult time.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from Patricia.
Isabel had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Isabel, go ahead.
Oh, Isabel, you're on mute.
Okay. Another aspect of the housing, but this came to mind when we were talking about this. So obviously we know we don't have enough affordable housing, and the rents are, too high in Santa Monica. And, I just, as a person on the ground, I see a tremendous amount of development going up, and it seems to all be, luxury housing. And I know that then a certain percentage needs to be affordable. But what I'm wondering is that in order to get affordable housing, does that mean we have to build so much more luxury or market rate housing? Is there any way to get affordable housing without overdeveloping the whole city?
There are definitely options that we can explore. So creating more dedicated streams of funding for housing, advocating for dedicated streams of funding for affordable housing, both from the state, from the county, and also from the federal level. Something that I heard that was part of mayoral candidate Karen Bass's platform was looking to see if we could declare a state of emergency around homelessness, which could potentially open up some streams of funding from FEMA. I would need to look into it more to determine the feasibility of that, but I think there we have a very strong voice as a city that's known for being progressive, as a city with a $705 million annual budget and lobbyists at every level of government. We can use that voice to advocate for those dedicated streams of funding so we can build deed restricted affordable housing without necessarily needing to build, 1 million units or however many of market rate. And, there are a lot of conversations around how much of what type of housing is needed. And I think that there are other ways that we can also address it without just needing the larger kind of scale developments of housing. We can also look at, creating kind of smaller unit sizes. And by smaller unit sizes, I mean smaller buildings that have, 4 to 6 units in places that are zoned R2, creating more housing that are, that's maybe smaller buildings. There was actually just recently, yesterday, I believe, a bill passed at the state level, AB 2011, which allows for more housing along boulevards. And I know that that's something we were talking about before, but it allows housing in commercially zoned neighborhoods. And that's something that we can utilize. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there's also a prevailing wage provision in there. I do think that we need to focus more on a living wage so that folks who work here can't afford to live here, but that's a very long topic that I don't think we have time to get into right now, unfortunately.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much. So appreciate, Natalya, you stopping by, and we'll hear from you soon. Thanks for your interview.
Thank you so much.
Could I ask a question that I wasn't going to ask? Are you going to put that your support for GS and your opposition to DT on your website straight away, like today?
I'm not in charge of my website. I'm not I don't have access to make edits to it, but I will reach out and see what we can do.
Well,
We'll make
you are in charge of the content. You are the candidate. You're in charge of the content.
Yes, I'm in charge of the content, but I don't have the edit access because I had handed that off to somebody else. Unfortunately, I don't have website developing, designing skills as much as certain folks did think I did like 10 years ago. But that was a format. So I'll reach out and I'll try to get that up as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Very much. Have a great rest of your night.
Natalya.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.